Perfect. Good morning. We'll call the meeting to order. We are conducting this meeting via conference call in accordance with the Municipal Government Act, Section 199. Please note this call is being recorded and will be uploaded to our website and/or social media. To eliminate background noise, please mute your phone during the council meeting. If you've submitted a comment request, the chair will call on you at the appropriate time. The chair may also openly ask for comments and concerns from the public relating to a particular topic. At this time, phone lines will be unmuted. If you would like to speak, please state your name. We ask that only one member of the public speak at a time. All persons will have the regularly allotted 10 minutes to speak as per our procedural bylaw. Everyone has a right to be present at council meetings and council committee meetings. Any attendees that are considered disruptive to the progression of this meeting may be removed at the discretion of the chair as per the Municipal Government Act, Section 198. We thank you for your cooperation and understanding. Additionally, our voting procedure will be modified for our teleconference meetings. I will call for any councillor who is opposed to a motion to indicate verbally. For any motions with expressed opposition, we will conduct a roll call vote. And we'll just start with a roll call to confirm that all of council is here. Is Deputy Reeve Clausen here?
Here and waiting.
Councillor Wilson?
Present and accounted for.
Councillor Bigger?
Here.
Councillor Eichert?
Can you hear me? Present.
There you go. You bet. Councillor Kester?
Here.
And Councillor Armstrong?
Yeah, I'm here.
Perfect. Good morning, everybody. We have
Morning.
an agenda before us. Does anybody have any additions or changes?
Good morning, Madam Reeve, Brian from administration. We do have one addition under business arising. We're hoping to ratify a planning and priority session for council attendance.
Thank you. We'll put that under 2.31. Does anybody else have any addition?
Wilson has addition for bus funding.
Mm. .22. No, sorry, 2.32. We'll do that. I'd like to add a discussion regarding a request that is circulated from Reeve Greg Belkey with Rossview County. We can put that under 2.33. Anything else? A motion to approve the agenda, please.
Agenda is amended. Armstrong.
Councillor Armstrong has moved. Any further discussion? Is any councillor opposed? The motion is carried. We have the minutes from our regular council meeting April 7th included in the package. You'll find them starting on page 3. Did anybody see any errors or omissions?
I'll move the minute. Wilson.
Councillor Wilson has moved. Is anyone opposed? Motion is carried. I move that the process for the Wheatland County Council meeting, as it pertains to the scheduled public hearings, will be as follows. Public hearing, first reading if required, then consideration for further readings of bylaw for those public hearings that have been closed. I further move that the above process will take place with the absence of resolutions to go into and out of council before and after each public hearing. Is anyone opposed? Motion is carried. I'll call the public hearing to order for bylaw 2020-11. Welcome, everybody. Does any member of the public have an objection to any councillor sitting on council for the public hearing? And can administration verify that the public hearing was circulated in accordance with the Municipal Government Act?
We can, and I'm now sharing screen. Just want to confirm everyone can see it.
Thank you, Graham. And were there any written submissions?
Not for this bylaw, no.
Perfect. We look forward to your presentation. Good morning.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Just for reference on your agenda packages, we are on page 12 right now. So this is bylaw 2020-11 to redesignate 4.20 acres from agricultural general district to country residential district within Northeast 52322 west of the fourth meridian. This is located, I will move down now to a map. We are now on page 16 of the agenda. So you can see that it's located adjacent to Range Road 224. It's a residential parcel right here in red, surrounded, and now we're on, page 17, surrounded by cultivated land to the south and zoned agricultural general. And this is page 18. Now I'm moving back up to page 12. So this area to be redesignated contains a private dwelling serviced by a private well and private sewage disposal system, while the remainder of the corridor section will remain agricultural, and there are no plans for further development. Staff is recommending the council approve bylaw 2020-11 after a public hearing. This redesignation and subdivision is not within the Calgary Metropolitan Regional Board area, and is in alignment with the South Saskatchewan Regional Plan, the Regional Growth Management Strategy, the Municipal Development Plan, and aligns generally with the Country Residential District guidelines and uses within the land use bylaw. Upon circulation to land, we're on page 13 now, just by the way, for your reference. Upon circulation to adjacent land owners within a radius of 1 mile, as well as internal and external agencies, we received no comments or objections to this redesignation. So staff is recommending that council move to approve bylaw 2020-11 to redesignate 4.20 acres of Northeast 52322 west of the fourth meridian from agricultural general district to country residential district. And that concludes this presentation. Thanks. Again, we're on page 14.
Excellent. Thank you. Would anybody like to speak in support of the application? Would anyone like to speak with concerns or in opposition to the application? Does staff have any final comments?
No final comments from staff.
We will close the public hearing for bylaw 2020-11. Council's wishes for further readings.
Wilson moves that council move second reading of bylaw 2020-11.
Councillor Wilson has moved. Is there any discussion? Is any councillor opposed? Hearing none, motion is carried. A motion for third reading.
Bigger, I'll move third reading.
Councillor Bigger has moved third reading for bylaw 2020-11. Is there any discussion? Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried. We'll move to bylaw 2020-12. We'll open the public hearing. Does any member of the public have an objection to any councillor sitting on council for the public hearing? And can administration verify that the public hearing was circulated in accordance with the Municipal Government Act?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. And were there any written submissions?
Yes, we received one written submission prior to the public hearing. It's a letter. It's 2 pages. I'm going to just a second. 1 second. I will post it on screen and also send it as an email here. So it's a 2-page submission.
Thank you.
Can everyone still see it?
I'm on the meeting just through a phone call, so I'm just following in my council package, but I will watch for it in my email. I
Okay.
believe, is the rest of council also phoned in, or are you connected via internet?
I'm
Just
just
only
on the
Ikert
phone.
here. I'm just Ikert here. I'm just on the phone, so I'm waiting for the email.
Okay, it's coming. 1 moment.
They might be on yours right now. He just said I have a 2-page submission. I'm trying to put it on the screen and email it to everyone.
Okay, and Margaret, I forwarded it to you, Margaret, as well.
Is it a short letter?
It is a 2-page letter.
Oh, okay. Okay. Just
Question, is that the right land location for this one?
I don't know if it's yours or not.
16, 24, 26?
One moment to confirm. Yes, this is the correct land location. Northwest 16, 24, 26.
Thank you.
No, or a speaker. If they'll let you, I don't know if you'll be able to speak on that. Remember, you had to add what phone number you were calling from.
Would it be easiest if we read the letter following the staff presentation?
Has the email not come through yet?
nope.
Not yet.
1 moment. Margaret, have you received my email?
Graham, it's Brian from administration. Can you also forward that email to me?
Yes,
just so I have it
one
as well.
second. Yeah, and I've CC'd Matt in it as well.
Good morning, Council. It's Matt from administration. I'm just forwarding this off to you. I just received it now.
And Brian, I've sent it to you.
Okay, perfect. I have received it as well. So Matt, if you can send it out, that would be good.
I distributed it to council, so council, it has been sent out, so we can just wait until you receive, and then feel free to read it.
We've received it now. Thank you. We'll just give council a moment to read the letter, and when administration is ready, we can start the presentation. Has all of council received the emailed letter?
Ben has.
Bigger has.
Esther has.
Wilson has.
Eichert has it. I gotta get a better email provider, I guess.
Oh, here, I got it.
Councillor Eichert, did you say you do have it?
No, I do not.
Would you like me to read it?
I hate to put you through that, but yeah, I think it's like it's not showing up here.
Yeah, it's probably best for transparency anyway, and it will be part of the record. Mr. Allison, we proposed amendment redesignation of Northwest 162426 west of the 4th, file land use 2020-06. Richardson International Limited, Richardson, owns the property Richardson Property that is directly across Range Road 264 from the subject matter property, which will be referred to as the Bartleland property. Richardson operates a crop input facility on the Richardson property. Richardson has significant concerns associated with the redesignation of a portion of the Bartleland property from Agriculture General District to Industrial General District. The proposed redesignation, namely associated with increased traffic volumes to and from the Bartleland property, particularly in respect of increased volumes of heavy machinery, trucks, and vehicles accessing the property and using the roadway. Richardson has observed that tractors and lengthy trailer units are often parked on or along Range Road 264 at the existing Barchem packaging facility, existing Bartleland facility, which is located to the north and east of the Richardson property, and expect that similar activities may occur at the Bartleland property should the proposed redesignation be approved. Such increased traffic flow of heavy vehicles along Range Road 264 and or such vehicles being parked in front of the Richardson property off of Range Road 264 would be likely to cause significant disruption and enhanced public safety risks to the Richardson business, including its customers on and access to the Richardson property. Furthermore, Richardson operates an existing commercial fleet of tractor trailer units from this facility. As such, if business practices associated with the proposed redesignation include the intent to park heavy vehicles along Range Road 264, this will additionally create a highway traffic control hazard for vehicles accessing the Richardson facility due to potential constraints on road space, turning radius, and other like issues. In addition, the Richardson property operates a legacy agro-retail distribution service for anhydrous ammonia fertilizer, which includes both the storage of large volumes of product in a stationary storage vessel and fleet of rolling stock. While anhydrous ammonia is a commonly used agricultural fertilizer, due to its classification as a dangerous good, governments, in collaboration with the Canadian fertilizer industry, have worked collaboratively to ensure appropriate safety and stewardship programs are in place to protect public safety as it relates to agro-retailer distribution centers. One of the primary public safety criteria enacted in the last decade by the fertilizer industry is warranting that a minimum 500-meter setback distance is established from an anhydrous ammonia agro-retail distribution center to another commercial operation, community, and/or public dwelling. Where the population of a commercial operation, community, and/or public dwelling increases, the minimum setback distance can be increased to 1.5 kilometers. The purpose of this setback distance is to ensure the per capita population near these types of operations are limited to essential operations personnel only in the interest of public safety. Given that Richardson's facility is an existing permitted structure located across from the Bartleland property, for Wheatland County to now allow another commercial facility of any type to be constructed in the location of the proposed redesignation is not in the public interest, is in direct contravention of industry best practices as established by the Canadian fertilizer industry, and may introduce incremental public safety risks based on the aforementioned points. Richardson also has concerns about the general public safety of increasing vehicular traffic along Range Road 264 and its intersection with Highway number 1. If the proposed redesignation is approved, this intersection and route would be likely to be used as the same entry and exist point to and from any new Richardson property. Any new Bartleland facility on the Bartleland property, as is currently used to access the Richardson facility on the Richardson property. An increase in heavy vehicular traffic and overall traffic along Range Road 264 and at its intersection with Highway number 1 would certainly increase the overall accident potential on this route. In order to lessen the concerns noted above, Richardson requests that the county consider 1. Setting back from Range Road 264 the proposed area within the Bartleland property to be redesignated as Industrial General District to a much greater distance to the east from Range Road 264. 2. Requiring that the Bartleland property owners improve Range Road 264 and its intersection with Highway 1 such that it could accommodate greater volumes of traffic and access and egress of such traffic into and out of the Bartleland property. 3. Imposing restrictions on the parking of truck and trailer traffic along Range Road 264 outside of the Bartleland property, and/or 4. Rejecting the proposed redesignation. If you require any further information or further clarification, please contact the writer. With that, we can move to the staff presentation if administration is ready for that.
We are ready.
Wonderful. Good morning.
Good morning. Okay, so we are now on page 20 of the council agenda package, introducing bylaw 2020-12 to redesignate 4 acres of agricultural general district to industrial general district within Northwest 162426 west of the 4th Meridian. So the owners of this site have operated a packaging business on site since 1988, and they would like to build a new warehouse and packaging facility 300 meters south of their current operations so that it can be directly across from the Richardson Pioneer facility on Range Road 264. The business has 6 permanent employees and expects to hire 3 or 4 more in the next 2 years. The proposed parcel is located adjacent to Range Road 264. The owner has proposed 2 approaches to this parcel in order to accommodate the shipping and receiving needs of the new facility. staff is recommending that council choose to approve this redesignation after the public hearing. That is a bylaw 2020-12 to redesignate 4 acres of Northwest 1624-26 from agricultural general district to industrial general district. I'm going to move down now to the maps. First being on page 25, just to show the location north of Highway 1 and northwest of Cheadle. And now on to page 26, where we can see the proposed location of this redesignation. And now on page 27, our landowner circulation map. Moving back up. So this, we are now on page 21. This redesignation is within the Calgary Metropolitan Regional Board Plan area, but it is not amending a statutory document, so circulation to the board was not required. It's in general alignment with the South Saskatchewan Regional Plan, the Regional Growth Management Strategy, the Municipal Development Plan, and the Land Use Bylaw. So the remainder parcel has access off of Range Road 264, and the applicant has proposed 2 new approaches off of Range Road 264 for the proposed parcel in order to accommodate their shipping and receiving needs. They estimate that they will average 4 trucks to the new facility per day, and that the 2 approaches will be able to accommodate those shipping needs. We've provided comments from transportation below. Proposed parcel is not serviced. Private well, private sewage disposal system are proposed. There's been a wastewater report submitted in January of 2020. A water well reconnaissance report was completed in June 2019. They both concluded that wastewater and well are viable on this site. So, apart from the letter that was presented at the beginning, we also received comment from Agricultural Services asking for consideration. Sorry, we're on page 22 now, by the way, everyone. Consideration could be given to moving the proposed site north closer to the existing buildings to limit fragmentation of the remaining farmland. But proximity of industrial development to an existing residential development may be a factor. Alternative recommendation could be given to locate the industrial district to the industrial area along Highway 1. And then transportation and infrastructure said that then that approaches would need to meet county standards, and preferably there would be a wider shared approach. So we've discussed with the landowner about the possibility of moving this redesignation somewhere else on the parcel prior to this. So now on page 23, staff is recommending that council open the public hearing and move to approve bylaw 2020-12 to redesignate 4 acres of Northwest 1624-26 west of the 4th Meridian from Agricultural General District to Industrial General District, and that concludes the staff's presentation.
Thank you. Just a note, and it's not significant, but I believe the proposed redesignation is outside of the CMRB plan area.
I correct you. It is inside the CMRB.
Oh, is it? Sorry, my apologies.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yes, sorry, my sincerest apologies. Does the applicant or any person in support of the application wish to speak?
I don't think he. Okay, so me.
Hello? Yeah.
Good morning.
Good morning. Yeah, good morning. Good morning. Yeah, I would speak to any questions or concerns you have on that. I'm definitely moving it. We could definitely move the acreage to as far north as I can, so it's right next to my residence property there. That would be no problem. If you have any other concerns, I definitely will answer to them. Thank you.
Can you just State your name, please, for the record.
Yeah, my name is Mel Bartlin.
Thank you. And I'll call if any person would like to speak with concerns or in opposition to the application.
Hi, this is Shane from Richardson Pioneer. The comment was made it could move as far north as possible. How far north would that be?
That'd be just south of the residence.
Just south of the residence?
Yeah, yes.
Okay, so I guess our concern would be you're still within the 500 meters of the anhydrous.
Right. I mean, it's probably, I mean, I know in your letter it suggested moving it east of my property, but that would be very difficult for us to do. So, just to the south of our property, like I said, we move it as close as we can to our residence there, and that's probably the best we can do.
How far into the corridor could you, like, can you move it to the east as well?
Well, we could move it farther east. I mean, it is going to already be set back farther from the road than our current facility, so that it allows lots of trucks to get into the yard. But we could move it farther east. I mean, that'll take up more agricultural land. We're trying to limit the amount of agricultural land we use up, but we could move it farther east.
Sorry, if I can just note, we can have one speaker at a time, please, and if the speaker can make sure you're stating your name for the record. And Shane, if we could get your last name for our record as well.
Sherman.
Thank you for that. So we'll just try and keep it organized. To support for the application followed by concerns, and then the applicant will have a final opportunity to address any concerns. So if we can, does the individual with concerns have any further comments to make?
Yeah, just probably our biggest concern, or two concerns as the letter stated, was the traffic and then the 500-meter distance from anhydrous. Typically when we build, we have to be at least 500 meters now, so it's just a bit of a safety concern and something that we have to follow for the public as well. Yeah, that's about it for us.
Thank you for that. And does the applicant have any final comments?
No, not really. I mean, yeah, it's Mel Bartlin, and yeah, I don't. We'll do what needs to be done to make it to work with the county and to work with Pioneer Richardson. So we'll do what we need to do to make that work. But beyond that, I have no further comments. Thank you.
Thank you. And does our staff have any final comments? There's no further comments for the public hearing. I will close the public hearing for bylaw 2020-12. And council can consider further readings.
Deputy Reeve Clausen here. Just want to clarify some things for council. The existing, I just got it on Munisite here, pulling up distances, and from the existing anhydrous tank to the residence that Mr. Bartlin has right now and his business. The home itself is 300 meters away. The warehouse, the existing warehouse he has now is 365 meters away. His other warehouse, 400 meters away. To meet that 500-meter setback, we'd be pushing it back into wetlands. And it wouldn't be accessible, just for information. I need to know if 500 meters is a law or a suggestion. And also on the traffic here, I drive that road pretty much 4 times a day. I have seen trucks parked on the road, but it's usually in winter condition or something like that. And they're not there for very long. And I don't believe the operator of the warehouse is telling them to park there. I believe it's lack of driver experience, being that some of these guys do not know how to drive in the winter. So I'm sure he doesn't want them parked on that road. I've seen him out there getting them off of there. And I do know there is some grade problems there where guys have trouble getting out and whatnot, but it's a minor issue and it's an enforcement issue really. So that's all I have to say about that.
Other discussion?
Hello,
Councillor Armstrong?
can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, my concern is the same as Richardson's. They're trying to follow the rules and regulations of the Sun Hydrus, and I know we went through an issue like that with a storage area over by Standard a few years back, and I don't know why we would allow somebody to build within the 500 meters when they're trying to maintain the rules that are set down by their industry. So yeah, I'm opposed to them. Yeah, for that reason alone. Did you hear me?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Armstrong.
Okay, thank you.
Other discussion?
Yeah, it's Glenn here. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you,
Hello?
Councillor Kester.
Yeah, I have concerns too with this 500 meters for sure, but the traffic and the parking on the road and the turning radiuses and stuff, I don't travel it that often, but seems like when I do, I have noticed trucks there before. Before I could vote for it, I'd have to see if there's ample parking on the property to accommodate these extra trucks. I don't see anything like that. I don't know if there's enough room on the property. So yeah, for the time being, I can't support this either.
Thank you, Councillor Kester. Any other discussion?
Through the Reeve, we staff can also suggest tabling second and third reading until we can come up with a proposed development area that fits the criteria.
I'm completely at council's wishes.
I would like to.
Ben Armstrong, I'd be in for that because I can't vote for it the way it is now.
It's Councillor Kester here. I like staff's recommendation. This operation's been there for a few years, and I don't want to see it go away. But if we can come up with a solution to those concerns, yeah, I can certainly wait.
I believe
Do you want a motion from council? I'd put a motion on the floor that this be set aside until staff can work with the proponents of the application to find a suitable site that satisfies both parties.
Administration can advise. I don't believe we need a motion. I believe we can just hold off on second and third reading and revisit it, add it to an agenda once the development area has been discussed. Administration advice?
Yeah, it's Brian from administration. That's correct. Just no motion would be suitable for us.
Councillor Eichert here. I understand the concerns. I'd like this run by Protective Services to see if they can handle this. But we have got a business that's in place right now that is not within the guidelines. All this guy's trying to do is expand his business. We should be able to devise a plan that his trucks are on the 4 acres that pull off and on and all that. But remember, this guy is just trying to expand his business, and his existing business wouldn't follow the guidelines. So trying to make him fall into the guidelines now is silly. So I would like to hear from Protective Services to make sure that everything is as safe as we can make it. There are risks in life.
Noted. And it sounds like there's a spirit of cooperation between the applicant and the party with concerns regarding the application. And if administration can work with parties and see if there's a way to just delineate the development area and address some of the concerns that have been brought forward during the public hearing. Sounds like there's consensus amongst council. Ben, I didn't hear, were you just offering to make that motion, or did you make that motion? I'm not sure.
Well,
I forget the wording.
We're in the process that we're in right now. I think for staff to do something, we need a motion asking them to do it. So I'd put that motion on the floor for them to work with the two parties to come up with a site that works.
Any discussion?
Hi, Scott here. Similar to what Councillor Eichert had said, this site, and I like I said, I pulled it up on Muni site. In order to meet that 500 meters, the two existing buildings that are there now, all the existing buildings are within that 500 meters. So it's kind of silly to have the same business have another building be outside the 500 meters when his others are in there. So I don't really know what's going to come back that's any different other than the parking, and the parking can be easily addressed through bylaw enforcement. And I'm sure the applicant wants to not have that problem as well. And this is a new site. This isn't, it's kind of an addition to there, but he's trying to make it better. He is growing his business. And in this economy, that's great that he's doing that. I'd like to support him as much as I can. I really don't. I'm okay with it coming back again, but I don't know how it's going to solve any of the problems other than the applicant and the opposer can figure something out. I don't want to see it go away. I'd like to see it move forward. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, there's a motion on the floor. Is any councillor opposed?
Clausen's opposed.
Just for clarification, can you read back this motion for me?
Margaret, do you have the motion? My understanding of the motion, just from recollection, is that it would be to table second and third reading and to direct staff to work with the applicant to address the concerns raised in the public hearing. Ben, is that consistent?
Yeah, but it's not a tabling motion. It's just a motion to have it go back to staff to meet with the parties and come up with a recommendation that works for the two parties. Tabling motion needs a time attached to it. This one is just to set it aside till staff has a chance to work with the proponents.
The referring motion isn't.
Sorry, Councillor Wilson.
This is Margaret. Can you hear me?
Yes, Thank you, Margaret.
Hi. My take on this would be to defer the readings at this time to allow staff to further review the application.
Yeah, that's all right.
Any further discussion?
I'm still got a huge problem here that the existing buildings aren't within the 500 meters. We can't get this landowner cannot get this property within the 500 meters. And he's running a business the way it is. It's been like this forever and a day. What is this going to accomplish? Get Richardson, get Bartlett to get together, come up with something, but getting us to stick our nose in it isn't going to help anything. The government's heavy-handed enough already. My rant is done.
Just a comment, the issue is that we're talking about a brand new application here. This isn't the original one. This is a new location, and we're compounding the problem by moving it closer to where the problem was. So that's my issue. Why would we compound the problem? Yeah, I know the distance isn't now, but they have been getting along, so there's obviously been some cooperation between them. I'm just asking staff to go back and see if they can work with them to do that. This is a brand new application that's got.
Madam Reeve.
In here.
Oh, sorry.
Just a question for staff. If the applicant was to expand the existing site without a new subdivision and all this kind of stuff, we wouldn't be having this problem, correct?
Can you repeat that one, Deputy Reeve Clausen?
If the applicant was to expand the existing site, which I don't know if he can, without having a new parcel, we wouldn't be having this discussion at all. It wouldn't even come to MPC. It would just be an expansion of his own land, his family's land, so.
Hi, Madam Reeve, and it's Matt here, and just to council. So a couple things in order to move forward, because we can certainly commit to working with the applicant in order to make this work, and I do see a way to make this work. But to address Deputy Reeve Clausen's concern with regards to potentially expanding, and then we wouldn't have to be dealing with this. Unfortunately, they've outgrown their home-based business in accordance with the land use bylaws, so they can't expand the site without going through this process. And that's just within our bylaws. So, I mean, unfortunately, we're going to have to work with the applicant to address these concerns. And then to the new notice of motion that's been put forth to direct staff to work with the applicant. Certainly that is our objective moving forward with regards to hearing the discussion that's ongoing here. So we will commit to working with the applicant to address the concerns that have been put forth. And as well, they've been clearly outlined in the letter put forth from Richardson as well. So we have no problem in doing that. And I do see a way forward. So staff are going to work, planning staff, development staff, our mapping staff, and protective services to address these issues. We can also see from the, if there's a potential to seek a variance. So we're going to exhaust every avenue necessary in order to make this work. So one of our planners has already put forth a proposal to maybe speak it to the provincial government and see if there's ability to get a variance, which is an excellent suggestion. So we're going to exhaust that avenue as well. So just for council's level of comfort, we can move forward with this with your direction that you've put forth. So we have no problem in doing that. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Any further discussion? And my apologies, I believe we voted on this on Councillor Armstrong's motion. Correct me if I'm wrong. Apparently it's one of those mornings.
Perhaps just vote, but I don't recall. So.
I'm sorry?
Councillor Clausen was the one that was in the objection, so it would be up to the Reeve to ask for a vote then.
I couldn't recall if that was if I had called that vote or if Deputy Reeve Clausen had just stated that. So that was just a statement. Is that correct?
No, I'm opposed.
No, I know, but had my sincerest apologies. Have I called the vote?
Yeah, you asked if there was any councillors opposed to it.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Clausen is the only one voting in opposition to the motion?
Councillor Akers voting in opposition.
Okay. Any other councillor, or do we want a roll call?
Just to clarify, I think if any opposition, I'd like to see a roll call.
Okay, we will do that right now. So there's a motion on the floor. I will vote in favor of the motion. Deputy Reeve Clausen,
Opposed.
Councillor Wilson,
In favor.
Councillor Bigger,
In favor.
Councillor Eichert,
Opposed.
Councillor Kester,
In favor.
Councillor Armstrong.
In favor.
Motion is carried. We will open the public hearing for bylaw 2020-13, and I'll refer you to page 28 in your agenda package. Does any member of the public have an objection to any councillor sitting on council for the public hearing? Can administration please verify that notice of the public hearing was circulated in accordance with the Municipal Government Act?
Yes, we can.
And are there any written submissions?
There are no written submissions.
Excellent.
Okay, so this is bylaw 2020-13. Purpose of this application is to redesignate 3.31 acres of agricultural general district to country residential district to facilitate a future subdivision. The parcel is located adjacent to Township Road 240, with existing access to the proposed parcel and to the remaining lands. The proposed redesignation contains a private dwelling, which is serviced by a private well and private sewage disposal system, as well as a garage, barn, and farm buildings, while the remaining lands contain a private dwelling serviced by a well and private sewage disposal system, as well as a garage and chicken coop. The remainder parcel will remain as the agricultural general district. Staff is recommending that council approve bylaw 2020-13 after public hearing. This redesignation is within the Calgary Metropolitan Regional Board. We are now on page 29, but it is not amending a statutory document, so circulation to the board is not required. This proposal is also in alignment with the South Saskatchewan Regional Plan, the Regional Growth Management Strategy, the Municipal Development Plan, and the Land Use Bylaw. I'm going to move down to some maps now. So we are on page 33 of your agenda package. So as you can see, the location of this parcel on Township Road 240. And moving down to page 34, our land use context with the agricultural land base. Here is a site plan to show our subject site, and it's on page 35. We have our adjacent landowner circulation map here on page 36, also seen from the air photo. The residence is located on site. Now on page 29 and 30 of your report, upon circulation to adjacent landowners as well as internal and external agencies, we received no comments or objections to this application. So staff is recommending here now on page 30 that council approve bylaw 2020-13 after a public hearing. This being the bylaw to redesignate 3.31 acres of Southwest 6, 24, 25 west of the 4th Meridian from Agricultural General District to Country Residential District. That concludes this presentation. Thanks.
Thank you. Does the applicant or any person in support of the application wish to speak? Does anyone with concerns or in opposition to the application wish to speak? Any final comments from staff?
No final comments from staff.
Thank you. I will close the public hearing for bylaw 2020-13. Council's wishes.
Councillor Eichert moves second reading of bylaw 2020-13.
Any discussion? Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried. Motion for third reading.
Wilson moves.
Any discussion? Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried. We'll move to bylaw 2020-15.
Good morning, Raven Council. This is Megan Williams. So this is just a presentation for the bylaw 2020-15, the redesignation. I am on page 37 of the council package. So this application is just to redesignate about 5 acres of quarter section northeast 18, 23, 26 west of the 4th from Agricultural General District to Country Residential District in order to facilitate a future subdivision. This will be the first subdivision from the quarter section, and as such, municipal reserve cannot be taken. The existing development includes a residential dwelling, and there's no additional proposed development at this time. So staff is recommending that council move first reading for bylaw 2020-15, this being the bylaw to redesignate about 5 acres of the northeast 18, 23, 26 west of the 4th from agricultural general to country residential, and that council move to schedule a public hearing for bylaw 2020-15 for June 2nd, 2020 at 9 a.m. A preliminary review of the South Saskatchewan Regional Plan, Regional Growth Management Strategy, the Municipal Development Plan, and Land Use Bylaw didn't reveal any concerns. A more in-depth review will be provided with the public hearing package. Council has 3 options before them: to approve the recommendation, to not approve it, and to approve an alternate recommendation. The comments received for the external agency and internal department circulation is on page 40. There weren't any concerns. We did receive comment from Rocky View, and they didn't have any concerns or comments at the time. Public Works did ask that the approach be built to county standards, and so this comment will be carried forward to the subdivision stage. You can see the maps starting on page 43. So page 43 has a location map. You can see it's adjacent to Range Road 265. Page 44 has the aerial imagery. You can see that the proposed redesignation area is the only development on this quarter section. The rest of it is cultivated. And then page 45 has the land use context. You can see it's primarily agriculture around them with 1 or 2 can I count today? No, 5. There's 5 smaller country residential parcels also in the area. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Council's wishes.
Councilor Eichert moves that council move first reading of bylaw 2020-15.
Any discussion? Is any councillor opposed? Hearing none, motion is carried. A motion for public hearing.
So moved. Ben Armstrong.
Councillor Armstrong has moved for a public hearing for June 2nd at 9 a.m. Any discussion? Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried. We do have a 10 a.m. appointment. Is Corporal Andrews on the line?
Yes, this is Corporal Andrews. Can you hear me?
Yes. Good morning, Corporal Andrews. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, everyone, and I'm glad to be here. So I just wanted to go over the fourth quarter report and the new priorities. I won't take much of your time, but I know since I've just recently added you to our reporting structure, that I just wanted to give you a kind of a heads of what's going on. So we did end the fourth quarter March 31st, and I sent to Margaret our quarterly report. So what I do is I represent Bizanos Council, County of Newell's Council, Gem, Rosemary, and Hussar falls under Wheatland County, and I've been presenting to them. And quarterly, I usually meet with the council, and I'd like to do that with you guys as well, as is why I have this fourth quarter report. So for last quarter, I didn't actually consult you to see the priorities were okay with you, but I did Hussar, and they picked safe roads, property rural patrol crimes, and community engagement. For that, before I go into that, I'd just like to have a little spiel on the Bisano RCMP is dedicated to continuing to provide a high level of service to all residents in our current crisis. Rest assured, we are fully operational to answer all calls for service in the safest manner possible during these unprecedented times. With this in mind, our level of community engagements will be tailored with social distancing in mind to keep all parties safe from the transmission of COVID-19. We are here to keep all our community members safe and will continue to strive to improve our level of service in the future. We'd like everyone to stay safe and know that we are still here in full capacity. We are still answering calls. We are still responding to calls. The only difference is our office is closed to the public. In the past, we were open to the public for people to come visit us, to say hi and ask questions. We now, to keep everyone safe, we are closed. We still have an employee who's working Monday to Friday to answer all admin calls, non-emergency. She works from home every day but one day of the week, and we're still able to respond to calls and answer people's any questions. The only thing, we are limiting criminal records for non-essential services as of now. We did, I was pretty proud of the guys. They did a very good job, and this has a huge impact for Hussar as well. We went to a lot of events there, which is under your jurisdiction. We had 127 school visits through Bizano, Gem, Rosemary, and a lot of the colonies. There's some colonies that are in Wheatland as well. We had 47 total major events. This included in Hussar, where we attended the baseball event that they have. Unfortunately, I don't know if it'll be happening this summer. We did 400 total speed, intersection, and seatbelt tickets. So basically what that is, we track the warnings and tickets we give on the highway. I think that we had the numbers, it was 98% of the people that we caught having infractions were not from our residents. It's from people speeding through on Highway 1 and Highway 56 and 561, people coming from places like Drumheller and Calgary and Medicine Hat. We checked over 1,000 vehicles for sobriety and had 32 proactive impaired. We had a large amount of them was on Highway 56 between Hussar. We found there was a lot of people from Drumheller in that area who'd use those as back roads. we did 496 rural property crime patrols. So this is a large number, and we're going to continue to increase. We like to make sure that the residents in Wheatland County in our areas feel safe. And one of the easiest ways to make them feel safe is that they actually see us, especially in the rural areas. So we've done our best that we can to increase these patrols, and we track them. And like I said in the past, it's at least 45 minutes driving in the area. So we track that, and in my monthly mayor's reports that I've started to send, you'll see there's a graph that shows how many we actually patrolled in your area. So for Wheatland, it would be under Hussar. We are going to increase patrols as much as we can now, since we have had a slowdown in calls due to people being isolated in the rural areas, just to make sure everyone's safe, because we are worried that there could be an increase of property theft and copper theft with people losing jobs and income that could increase crime. We haven't seen a huge increase in any type of personal residential areas. We have seen a slight increase in copper theft, but like I've stated in my reports, we have a copper theft program that's running as we speak, an operation where warrants are being done and charges, so that isn't stopping. I know with COVID-19, people may think that operation is changing, but we are still have a priority of reducing rural crime. We did 8 proactive local news reports. Hussar, we didn't find Hussar had a actual local newspaper, so we've been reporting on their Facebook to residents to show what we're doing and things that are happening that can affect them. We did have 79 motor vehicle collisions. 4 of them were fatalities. We did have a fatality that was in Wheatland County. This was I think around September, last spring time. I'm not exactly the date right now. But we did have a huge increase in motor vehicle collisions. Not really understanding why it happened. We could add more reports. Also understand with those motor vehicle collisions, those are anything over $2,000. So a lot of them were minor. As with most newer vehicles, it's very easy. Any type of little bump can cause $2,000. So that's what we did last year. This year, we're going to continue our engagement, and we're going to do community engagement once things open back up. But what we've started is we used to do a reading program, so we're going to be doing that online for residents and people in the public. We're going to do a huge increase in rural patrols, and we've been tracking that. We've done over 50 so far in this month alone. And we were on the roads making sure that motorists are abiding by the laws with, obviously making sure that everyone's safe with the proper PPE. That is my report. If there's any questions or concerns about our priorities, please let me know.
Through the chair to Amber, can you hear me?
Yes.
Just Constable, thank you very much for what you're doing, and your comment about the ball games in Hussar is called Summer Days. They have been canceled to a later date. They haven't got a date yet, but they're not going ahead with that for now. But thanks for the extra patrols. I see them out here. I'm on the north end of your division and on the south end of Drumheller, and I see the patrol cars going by here more than I have before. So thanks very much for that.
Absolutely, yeah. We understand that people are being stuck at home. It's very stressful, and it does make people feel more at home, and so we will increase that. And yes, I forgot the name. Thank you for Summer Days. And when that does happen, we'll be there just like last year.
Yep, thank you.
Any other questions or comments from council? Corporal Andrews, we sincerely appreciate the communication and your consultation with our council, and we want to thank you for your service and for keeping our community safe. And please stay safe yourself and your department, and stay healthy.
Thank you very much. Same to you. You guys have a good rest of the meeting. And like I always say, if there's any issues or concerns, you guys have my email or contact, and I'll be able to speak to you anytime. You guys have a great day.
Absolutely. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
We'll move to 2.31, ratifying planning and priorities meeting. We'll need a council motion.
Clausen here. I'll make the motion to ratify the planning priorities.
Any discussion? Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried. 2.32 handy bus, Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, so the Handy Bus has asked for their yearly funding again. They've asked for $35,000. Throughout the last few months, I have made it very clear to them that we are in a tough spot financially. I've said I can't guarantee any funding. They actually took the $35,000 out of the budget as I couldn't promise a certain amount of money, but I can't make the motion to give them $35,000 because I don't think that for the amount of ratepayers of ours that are using the service, I can't justify giving the Handy Bus $35,000. I will gladly allow them $10,000 of the, if council approves, $10,000. There is only about 11 to 15 users from the county is kind of the math I did. It's really hard to get the numbers because they go by trip and not by individual user. For instance, one user uses the Handy Bus 4 times in a week. So they say that's 4 users, but it's one person using that service 4 times a week. That's how they collect stats. So, but from what I kind of understood, what we have is about 13 residents. And $35,000 for 13 residents on average isn't, I don't think, a good way to spend the $35,000. But it is a service that should be there. But the question is it costly and efficient for rural users to be using it? I think if we allow $10,000 to go to the Handy Bus, that should be sufficient enough to cover our users, because there are other service clubs in the county providing funding to the Handy Bus for their residents as well. Cheetah Lions, Carsland Public, Donna, what's the public utility? No, I can't.
Service, Public Benefit Club.
Yeah, Benefit Club. So we do have community groups supporting this service, and I think that's what needs to happen. If those individuals and those communities want that, I can see it, those groups supplying that funding. But for the average person out in mine and Ben's division, I know we also fund the Valley Bus, but it should be more of a user pay. They are trying to move to that. They're trying to change the model. The group is very reluctant, one could say, to find a more effective and efficient way to deliver this service, because it's a very costly service the way we're doing it now, and two on the board fully think there's a better way to do it. We've met with other service models such as High River, and they do it a much more cost-effective way with just as many users. So it's really hard to get that across at the board level. So that's why I'd also support the 10,000 in hopes that the decrease in funding will make them become more cost-effective. And if it's only 10,000, I don't believe it's necessary to have a person on the board. We give money to other jurisdictions, and we don't need a seat at the table. It goes back to the cost-effective aspect to it. I mean, we're sitting pretty tough financially. You don't need me to go and run up the tab on expense account sitting at meetings that are very hard to. Yeah, won't say anything else. But so I'll make the motion that Wheatland County Council approve $10,000 to the handy bus, and I'll let you guys consider the board membership. But that's my motion for now.
Discussion.
Question through the chair to Councillor Wilson and a comment. I think a lot of the residents from my area that use it are actually from Hazard. I don't think any of the rurals do. They drive from Hazard to Strathmore and then use the bus from there, but they are Hazard residents. The question is, do your numbers, do your numbers that you have include Gleason and Carsland?
Yes. So, but that's the thing. So all rural residents, so it's depicted between Strathmore and Wheatland County. So the villages are part of Wheatland County in the data. So
yeah, I know
that 13 number is including number in Standard, number in Hazard, might be one in Rockyford, and just to be clear, those villages don't pay into the expense. So you could say we could only have 9 people in there using this, and we're paying $35,000.
Yeah, no, I understand completely. Thank you.
So 10,000 is my.
Further discussion?
Clausen here, just a question. What do we give Drumheller every year? Is it 10 or is it 5?
It's about 5,000, and it covers the area from my road over towards Rosebud and up, and it's about 450 residents that in the area that they don't all use it, but that's what it's based on. It wasn't that much a few years ago. I think it was only 2,500, and we increased it a few years ago because they were looking for some funding for their buses. I think it's been 5,000 the last couple of years.
And just to further the budget expense for the handy bus, we don't control our own wages. All the employees are under the town. So over the last number of years, the wages of the employees have substantially went up. That's our largest expense. And though the town has increased the expenses, they haven't increased the funding to go with it. So I think we're starting to see a really big divide in what the town's willing to do and what we're willing to do.
Ben Armstrong, another comment. The Drumheller Handy Bus, I do not sit on their board. Theirs just comes as a request from the board.
Further discussion?
Yeah, I have a comment. The funding to me is funding, but if we decrease our funding level, they're not going to decrease their service in our area, or are they? Are they going to come up with a more equitable means of funding?
That would be the board's decision. I mean, yeah, I can't speak for future decisions as I'm one board member.
The service in our area, actually, they don't come out to Hazard and pick them up. It costs too much. The residents, whoever uses it, has to go to Strathmore, and then they get on the bus from there.
Yeah, we tend to pick up west of Strathmore, as it's usually on the way if we're going to Calgary.
Jason, has there been any talk of looking at a funding model much like FCSS or Redemza or housing, where I know.
To be quite honest, no, it hasn't, and I wouldn't even start those negotiations because I think the funding models in most of those organizations are very much skewed to favor the town, and I think we're already overpaying our fair share.
I think something has to be done in the future to make it fair. It's been a concern ever since it's in its present form. I'll go for the 10,000, but I'm still would like to see something done to make it sustainable and predictable, both for the county and the residents and for the handy bus itself.
Yeah, totally
We're able
understand.
to bank on it.
Another reason I think we should just look at the model and trying to almost force the hand by cutting the funding is right now we're undercutting private business, and that goes against everything that Alberta stands for. I mean, government doesn't undercut private sector, and right now we have companies willing to do it, but they can't afford to because we're taking the only revenue they can make. So, I mean, that's another big issue that I have.
I just have
So
two comments.
have you looked at, sorry,
Go ahead.
has there been any look at direct subsidy to, say, somebody, and these people that, I shouldn't say these people, are residents that use the handy bus. They use it because they have to. I don't know if it's so much a thing of affording, but just to be able to, somebody to drive them into their appointments into the city. This is a service more for medical than social.
If we could,
they
then
need it.
I fully agree with you, but right now there's such high expense that we're not just doing medical. I have been pushing to just strictly do medical trips for the last 6 months, and they do not believe that is the way to go about it, because that would cut off so much cost and still, I believe, really push what needs to be done, take care of those who need to be taken care of. However, there is such strong reluctance to change the model that we almost have to force their hand in a way. And I didn't want to do that, but trust me, I fully agree with you that I think medical would be the best. But Ford has different thoughts.
It's Eichert here. I would like to see that the amount we send cut down to $10,000, and I'd like to see us, if at all possible, to withdraw from the board. And that would force the Handybus Association that if they want to do something, that they would have to come to us and give that proposal to us, and then we could, as a council, decide that we'll increase our spending, our contribution that particular year. So, yeah, I'm good with. I'd love to see the cut down to $10,000, and I would like to see the step off the board.
Amber, I know you had a question, and
Yeah, I just have a couple of comments. 3 comments. So the first being, and I know I have said this before, but I'll reiterate it, is that while we may only have, between 11 and 15 actual Wheatland County residents currently using the handy bus, I'm cognizant that many of the current town residents are, the pioneers and founders of Wheatland County that have made our municipality what it is, and have maybe decided to spend their retirement in a more urban setting where it's easier to access, whatever, shopping, medical care, that type of thing.
Can I address that comment?
Of course.
So I believe that the county gives ample opportunity to seniors have moved from the county to the urban centers. The funding that we gave.
Jason, I'm not sure if everybody else can hear what you're saying, but you're breaking up.
Oh, sorry. Is that better? by any chance?
That does sound better. Yep.
I think we give ample opportunity to seniors and those who move to town through the Wheeland Housing Management Body. We bring those seniors, those pioneers, closer to the services that they need with that funding. Not only that, how many town residents want to move to the country, older town residents, retired to an acreage where their grandkids can play? Do we see funding from the town of Strathmore or the town of Drumheller to those residents?
Yep, fair comments. I think typically people that might be accessing the handy bus wouldn't typically be moving to a rural setting where they don't have, like where they would need independent transportation. And I think the lodge is absolutely one support that we provide to our seniors. But we also have seniors that are still able to live independently, but perhaps want to live in a more urban facility where it precludes the necessity to, do their shopping by vehicle or that kind of thing, but they still need to travel to the city for certain needs. That was one of my points. The other point, and I think I've stated this before, my preference when making decisions, particularly around funding for an organization, I wouldn't mind just seeing a report on their operations and their financials, just so that we can have some of that context for decisions. And then my third point was just to what Councillor Armstrong spoke to. Based on the number of residents, he indicated that the Drumheller services, they serve about 5% of Wheatland County residents, and we are funding them with 5,000, or it may have been 6,000. I have in my head, but I could be wrong about that for sure. So just keeping in mind those ratios.
Oh, for sure.
So
but I'm
those
not
are my comments.
their servicing. I'm looking at how many users there are. If we're going to look at service, we're going to pull all numbers out of proportion, because you can't assume everybody. You can't say just because there's that many people, that's how much it services. We are looking at the most 13, including village residents. And I'd love to show you the stats, but stats aren't showing that because we record it by trip, not by individuals. And I would just like to point out, I'm not just talking about, when talking about town residents moving out here, I'm not just limiting what we spend on them to transportation, because God knows that's just about out of the government's realm. But people that move to the rural areas, we don't see any funding, period, to cover any expenses from their previous municipality, because it's not the previous municipality's job, period.
Any further discussion?
Clausen here. I'd actually like to see Drumheller and Strathmore be at the same funding level. And then take us off the board and we fund them equally. How they figure out their customer base is what they do. If there's a private entity out there that's willing to do this, that's fantastic. I firmly believe it's not government's job to step in the way of private industry. In fact, it's always been the case, in my opinion. And this gives us the opportunity to give it some business to somebody else. And usually they do it far better than we can do it, and for very good reason. So I don't know if Councillor Wilson would accept an amendment to match Drumheller's funding. Just curious.
I think 10,000 for now. We can definitely reevaluate next year. But I think right now, 10,000 is sufficient. I won't accept it. We can vote on it now, I guess, but.
Hello?
Hi, Councillor Kester.
Yeah. If we're giving 5,000 to Drumheller for 400 residents, how much do you think that would be for 8,000 residents?
Once again, I go back to my previous comments that just because there's 400 people or 8,000 people, I'm not going off that. You can't go off that. If we did every service like that, we would be broke. We'd be blowing the numbers out of proportion. We have to go
Just
by.
a note of a proportionate amount of funding would be about $90,000 just for interest sake. I'm not saying it's the basis for a decision, just looking if you were looking at rough per capita funding.
Move to call the question.
We can call the question. Is any councillor opposed to the motion? Reeve Link is opposed. Motion is carried.
Sorry, I couldn't get my button pushed here. I was opposed too. But it's okay.
You can do a roll call if you want. Like I said, if there's any opposition, I'd rather have a roll call.
Yeah, we'll do a roll. Reeve Link is opposed. Deputy Reeve Clausen.
In favor of the motion.
Councillor Bigger.
In favor.
My apologies. Councillor Wilson.
In favor.
Councillor Eichert.
In favor.
Councillor Kester.
Opposed.
Councillor Armstrong.
In favor with a comment. I have no issue with reevaluating what's down in Drumheller too, because I know the same issue happens down there that happens in Strathmore. A lot of the residents that use it have moved into the lodges down in Drummer houses down there from our area, but it does come out into the Dallam area. The bus does come out there occasionally, and like I said, we used to, I think originally we were only doing 2,500. So if council wants to reevaluate that at a later date, I'm fine with that too. But I'm in favor of the motion.
Motion is carried. Do we want to look at the board position on the Hendy Bus Board at this point, or do we want to wait until our organizational meeting, council's direction?
I would personally, this from Councillor Armstrong, I would wait till we do our organizational and deal with it at that time rather than pulling them out halfway through the year.
Yeah,
it's not going to be that big a cost, and if he doesn't attend the meeting, there's no cost. But I think we do that at our organizational.
Yeah, I agree with Ben. I'd like to stay on through this transitional period anyways through COVID. We are also losing our secretary, Florence Vanderveld. So I'd like to stay on up until the next organizational. But after that, I'm at the council as well.
All right, we'll revisit the discussion at our organizational meeting in October. I do think particularly just because the Handy Bus does serve such a large proportion of Wheatland County residents, and if there are concerns with it, particularly around the funding model or servicing model operations, it might be not a bad idea to have representation. Perhaps there's a more efficient way to do that, but we can talk about that in October. We will move to 2.33. I had circulated some information from Reeve Belke with Rocky View County regarding a request for consideration of funding to fund some advocacy efforts regarding the Calgary Metropolitan Region Board. So the estimated cost for the advocacy is approximately $60,000. Reeve Belke did say that this is planned to be done in 2 phases. There is a chance that the second phase may not be required. And the estimated cost that they were requesting for us to consider would be $9,000, which is approximately 15% of the total cost of $60,000. And I'm happy to answer any questions. I did have a brief conversation with Reeve Belke about this, if anyone has any questions. So the funding split would be Rocky View is offering to be responsible for 70% of the overall cost, and they have also asked Foothills County to consider cost sharing 15%, the same as Wheatland.
Amber, do you know if this was
Go ahead, Donna.
Sorry. Do you know if this was done through the Edmonton when it was going through?
I don't know. I'm sorry.
Hi, just a couple questions. I'm not very familiar with how lobbying works, but isn't Minister Madu supposed to have some kind of judgment, yay or nay, to us here anytime soon? And like if the lobbying, if we feel it's going to be effective, that's one thing. But I mean, we've all sent letters. I think we could be effective maybe trying to set up another meeting to push the issue a little more, especially now with COVID. I mean, we've talked about it at servicing, trying to basically postpone this, and the push just keeps coming from the bigger urban centers. And if that's what they want, let the urban centers do it, leave us out of it. And because it clearly shows now with this whole COVID thing, the difference of what our needs are. We are relatively safe out here. The bigger urban centers have issues, and it multiplies through so many different levels. If a lobbyist would work, I definitely would support it. I don't know much about it, but I also think us advocating is very effective as well. You know, there's a board meeting coming up. I don't know if there's some discussion on trying to postpone things. I hope there is. Just keep pushing it. That's my opinion.
Any other discussion?
Ben Armstrong here. I agree with Scott to some extent. I don't mind supporting Rocky View in some manner. Percentages are, I don't have an issue with, they sound pretty close. My issue would be that if we do this, we only do it for a year, because if not, something's going to happen, it's going to happen within the year. If we don't get what we want within the year, then we get back out of it. We don't start paying a lobby group to stay in there for the next 5 or 6 years lobbying.
I agree.
I give them 6 months or even 6 months. If they can't do something in 6 months, then they're not going to get it done.
Councillor Eichert here. I'm in favor of anything that will show Edmonton how important we believe it is for us to be out of this. It's just, if we're willing to spend $9,000 in this economic climate on a lobbying group that may or may not yield any results, I think that in itself shows something. And yes, I agree with Ben that this should be sort of a one-off kind of thing, or if we after 6 months we see some results, we decide whether we want to go on to phase 2. But I am all for this. Anything that will get us out of this thing is money well spent.
So Reeve Balke didn't specifically speak to the timeline, but my understanding is that this would be a very concerted, short-term effort. In no way did he imply that this would be a long-term commitment. I think it would be quite immediate and short-term.
Scott here. After hearing all the discussion, I'm in favor of doing it. I just, like I said, it's just my ignorance. I don't really know how they work. But if it gets an effective result, absolutely, we need to get out of this. $9,000, we could blow that in a couple meetings with staff time included. So it's well worth the effort.
Hello, Councillor Kester here. I'm agree to give it a chance, a shot. We've tried just about everything else. We haven't hired anything like this before. And there's a possibility this be a wider range of support for getting out. With the lobby group, they'll be, I'm sure, contacting investors and failed attempts to invest. So yeah, I'm willing to give it a try for half a year or year. I don't know how long lobbying goes on, but if we don't get out of this soon, it's not going to matter much anymore. We're going to be stuck with it.
I did let Reeve Belkey know that I was hoping to get a council motion on direction on this today, just so that Rocky View County will be considering it at their April 28th council meeting, and then the Rocky View County could proceed with the hiring and the process of this if council will consider a motion today.
Wilson will make a motion.
Oh, yeah, okay, go ahead, Jason.
We'll all make the motion.
Is that allowed? Team effort?
No. Did I hear Councillor Wilson first?
Sure. Wilson moves that we contribute 15% of the, I don't know what you want to call it, lobbyist fee?
I would say advocacy project or
Advocacy project with Foothills and Rocky View County up to a year. I would like to put a time frame in there. So
you said up to 1 year?
Yeah.
And do you want to just put a dollar amount, perhaps up to $9,000?
Up to $9,000.
There's a motion on the floor. Any discussion? Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried. We will move to 2.41, DP 2020-018, variances to existing dwelling.
Good morning. It's Suzanne Hayes presenting, and we're on page 52 of the agenda package. So this application is for 2 variance requests within the Lakes of Muirfield for an existing dwelling at Plan 071-0284, Unit 38. So the applicants requested a compliance in January and were advised that the dwelling was not compliant in 2 areas. So from the front yard setback, they were 4 centimeters too close, and from the side yard, they were 17 centimeters too close. So because it is greater than a 10% variance within a direct control district, council is the development authority, but I am asking that council make the decision on both variance requests at one time for simplicity. So what we did was we contacted the fire inspector, fire and building code specialist for Wheatland County to go out and do an inspection and just make sure there was no issues from a fire code perspective with the proximity of one building to another. So he did that on April 1st, and he concluded that we could recommend to approve both variances. So council is recommending approval of both variances, one to the side yard and one to the front yard. That was page 53. So we're moving on to page 54, where I've just reviewed the applicable legislation and development or land use bylaw sections that are applicable and who the development authority is. We have based our recommendation on the fact that the fire and building code inspector did not consider the variance to the side yard to be a risk as far as fire spread. The driveway still allows adequate room to park vehicles without extending beyond property boundaries, and no concerns were raised by neighbors circulated on this application. So on page 55 here, I'll just read the fire and building codes inspector's response. So the side yard, he said the balcony, the deck is not classified as a wall under the Alberta Building Code, although it is an extension of the dwelling. The deck extends beyond the dwelling, and the neighboring dwelling ends even with the back wall of the residence. The lower portion of the deck post is non-combustible rockwork and is more than 4 meters from the neighboring residence. And in the front yard, he's saying he recommends approval of the variance to the front yard as the stone face of the garage comes out at least 20 centimeters from the garage door, which is where the measurement was taken from. So internal fire review had no concerns, and again, no response from adjacent neighbors. So the standard 3 options that council has to consider. And I'll scroll down, I'm on page 58, and just showing the location of where this property is within the Lakes of Muirfield. And also an aerial photo of the deck on the rear portion of the dwelling, which was the one that was 17 centimeters too close to the property line. And we go down to page 59, which shows the RPR and indicates the measurement taken to the garage door in the front of the building and to the deck in the side rear of the building. Page 60, we just show the CMRB area and ASPs, which we are outside of, and we show the circulation area, which was done to adjacents +1 of around the existing dwelling. We go down to some photos on page 61 showing the front yard, the driveway. There's adequate room for a vehicle to park in there without extending onto the street. And these were taken by the fire inspector, all of these photos. So page 61, we also have a view of the rear deck of the property. Page 62, he's showing another view of the deck so he can show in proximity to the adjacent residence and where the deck fits within that. And that is everything. That concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Council's wishes.
Scott here. I'll make the motion to approve DP 2020-018 for the 2 variances subject to the conditions on 1 through 4 from page 53 to the top of page 54. Or I can read them out if we need.
I think if you just say as noted. Council discussion. Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried. We'll move to 2.42, Cannabis Cultivation and Enforcement Report.
Good morning, Council. It's Matt here. So on page 63 of your agenda package, there is a report in response to a few concerns posed by Council with regards to how the county deals really with the whole cannabis industry, as we're seeing more and more concerns percolate up from residents and industry on how really the separation of forces and powers between all governmental jurisdictions really come into play here. So in the report, you'll see a few background notes with regards to when the Cannabis Act really came into effect, which of course is on October 17th, 2018, creating that framework, both legal and regulatory, controlling the production, distribution, and sale and possession of cannabis in Canada. So we look down and we see that the federal government's responsibilities are really to set the requirements for the producers who cultivate and process cannabis, and to set industry-wide rules and regulations. And as Council knows, we've been going through a lot of back and forth with regards to when the Cannabis Act came into effect and was implemented, because obviously implementing a nationwide act is always going to go through its trials and tribulations, and we're really seeing it on the front lines here at the municipality and municipalities across the country. And that's noted in the 3rd paragraph of the report section with regards to how we are encountering issues with enforcement and illegal production of cannabis. So if you scroll down to the bottom of page 63, moving into page 64, we talk about the enforcement of the Cannabis Act in the county and how we undertake this process. And it's really similar to a lot of other issues that we encounter from the enforcement perspective. Really, as we are response driven, we note what the issue is, if it's coming from a councillor or a resident, and we investigate. So typically, let me walk you through how this works. We receive a complaint regarding the suspicion of an illegal cannabis cultivation or production operation. And staff will take that and investigate the complaint, confirming whether the property has any permits within the land file. So we do an investigation there. relation to the growing of cannabis. And if we have no permits, we work with the RCMP to make a determination if the investigation is being conducted. So we receive that notification if there is an investigation, and we do advise them of situations on an ongoing basis with regards to this matter. And we then issue an enforcement action under the land use bylaw, and that may be taken. So that is an option. And this could include a letter of inquiry, a warning letter, a stop order, and beyond that, a court order authorizing the removal of plants. You'll see under the GLCA, which is the Gaming, Liquor, and Cannabis Act, that an individual can grow up to 4 plants without a production license from Health Canada or a license under the Access to Cannabis for Medical Purpose Regulations, which is the ACMPR. If more than 4 plants are being grown without a license, it becomes an offense under the Cannabis Act with investigation and enforcement by the RCMP. So we do not receive information on residents that have a license to grow and cannabis for medical purposes. So the county would need to obtain the information voluntarily. And this is one of the issues I've been noting. There's a bit of a disconnect here, and this is why we receive, we get back to council sometimes with some unknowns and we have to do some further investigating. Is precisely because of one of these disconnects. And this is part of the challenge in terms of implementing such a vast new act across the country. So we do have enforcement measures as noted. However, there are some disconnects. In addition, the land use bylaw requires a development permit for a production facility, as council's aware. The county's definition for cannabis production facility is noted in this report as well. And it's also under the authorization by license pursuant to the cannabis regulations, and the note is there, or any successor or replacement of legislation or regulation which may be enacted in substitution thereof. And then under the nuisance and unsightly property bylaw, the provision for nuisance includes odor coming from properties. This may be an avenue to deal with complaints regarding odor coming from cannabis being grown at a private residence. And the report finishes off on page 64 and 65 by citing relevant policies, practices, and legislation. So this report is for information in response to concerns from council, and it is here to receive for information. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Does council have any questions? A motion to accept as information?
Councillor Eichert will so move.
Thank you, Councillor Eichert. Any further discussion? Questions or comments on the report? Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried. We'll move to page 67 in our council package. Carseland and District Community Association and Agricultural Society request for utility refund.
Good morning, Council. It's Dave Rhymes. This
Good morning,
is just a
Dave.
request. Good morning. The request for decisions report regarding a request from the Carseland and District Association and Agricultural Society for request of utility refund for water they used to flood the outdoor rink. Went through figuring out averages for the bills, to figure out an average for the utility bill for the hall, and provided a net difference in the report. It's on page 67 of the council agenda, and just recommending for council to approve a refund for the utility charges in the amount of $500.
Thanks, Dave. Council's wishes?
Dave, I have a question. So last year they used the fire hydrant, and last year the rink was in the same spot or very close to the same spot. I don't understand why they can't use it now, or they had used it before.
From what I understand from our operations staff is the hydrant's not draining, so it has a potential of freezing. We were just lucky it didn't freeze when they utilized that fire hydrant in previous years. So we had to find another source of water this year just to protect that infrastructure.
And that hydrant, is there something wrong with that hydrant, or it's just the way they're made?
From what I understand, that one is not a draining one. It's just the way it's made. So if there is a fire, they have to actually go and if it's utilized, they have to go send staff out to pump it out and get rid of the water out of that. So it's more just for an emergency situation, not like a constant use of like flooding a rink, for example.
So I have an issue with them asking for, this is an expense. This will be ongoing for every year. I think we should come up with a different solution than asking taxpayers to pay for it every year. Have they looked into, can they possibly look into a hydrant, like them putting in their own hydrant?
To the chair, if they were to install a hydrant, that would be a very, very costly endeavor. So it would have to be hooked up to our system. We still have to bill them for the water that's kind of going out. Like we'd have to meter it somehow. We can definitely look into alternate solutions for future years. I think just right now, we're just trying to find a very equitable way to make sure that this the flooding of the arena this winter, or the outdoor rink this winter, is kind of taken care of.
If I'm not mistaken, some of the rinks, I think the one in Cheadle and things like that, I do believe a local farmer pays for the flooding of that. They just call Grays and they come out with trucks. And I think Tom had mentioned that to me before. Maybe Donna in the future years get work or somebody like that to sponsor it and do a major, like just the initial ice buildup, and then the maintenance of it later would be substantially less water. It's good that we're metering this water, so we at least know. With a hydrant, you have no idea what you're doing. So if we're ever looking for leaks and whatnot, it's really good for staff to have that water metered, just so you know.
Yeah, I'm hoping we can come up with something different, because I don't want it charged every year, or come to council every year. That's, I mean, I can make a motion that we pay for it this year, that with the understanding that a solution going forward, a different solution going forward would be asked for.
So you're moving to refund the $500 charge for this year, with the caveat that a plan will be made for future years, an alternate plan will be made for future years.
Yes, the only thing is I'm quite worried about, like, for this year, is because their source of income with no community activities is being tasked. So yes, I made that motion.
Thank you. Any council discussion? Is any councillor opposed?
Hello, yes, I'm opposed. Hello. Can you hear me?
That councillor? Yeah, you bet. We'll call a roll call vote if there's opposition. Reeve Link is in favor.
Just a question before I vote. I was trying to get on and I couldn't get on there for some reason. What do we do in Gleason? They have an outside rink too. Does the Ag Society pay for that water? Or how do they deal with that one?
I'm actually not sure. Dave, are you able to answer that?
I believe it's flooded from the rink, so it'd be part of the ag bill for the water bill for that rink. I'm not sure how that's dealt with.
Yeah, that's how it's dealt with. I know that. They flood both.
My curiosity is why should council pay for the water that they use to flood a rink for their community? It doesn't matter to me if it's through a utility bill or through a hydrant. Why should we pay for that water that they're using for their community for entertainment?
Totally agree with Ben. Especially when we're not doing in other parts of the county.
Yeah, so I'm opposed to the motion.
Ken, my apologies. I didn't mean to call the question and preclude any discussion. My apologies. Any further discussion?
Councillor Eichert here. I'm opposed to the motion also, but I think this will be a good learning experience for the Ag Society there to apply for curb funding or something. Put this in, because this has got to be part of their new operating budget, right? They've got a new arena. They've got to pay for the operations of it. So, yeah, no, I'm opposed to it.
Any further discussion? We will conduct a roll call vote. Reeve Link in favor. Deputy Reeve Clausen.
Opposed.
Councillor Wilson.
Opposed.
Councillor Bigger.
Favor.
Councillor Eichert.
Opposed.
Councillor Kester.
Opposed.
Councillor Armstrong.
Opposed.
Motion is defeated.
Okay, Dave Rhymes again, on page 72 of your agenda package.
Yes, please go ahead, Dave. Thank you.
Now we have a playground equipment funding policy. This is policies of cost sharing between community groups and the county, where the capital costs will be matching up to 50% for playground equipment projects. The policy document on page 75 of the report. So just looking for council's approval of this policy at this point.
Thanks, Dave. Council's wishes.
Question on the maintenance cost. I would think that should be at least 50% too, up to. That way the community knows what condition and what it costs to maintain it. But when it comes to replacing it, they'll have a more informed decision. And maintenance costs sometimes can get out of control.
Through the chair, under policy number 3, if the county's matching 20%, 50%, 70%, it doesn't matter what it is, if they're matching any of that funding, does that preclude those community groups from applying for the CURB grants?
I don't think it would, but that's just my opinion.
To the Reeve, that was not our intention. So if someone were to apply for CURB for a certain specific project, we hadn't really precluded them from that type of funding. If it is council's wish, we could also exclude any CURB funding from that and just say the source of funding must be community fundraised somehow with the exclusion of the county, something along those lines.
Yeah, because my issue is if the county, as this states here, if the county puts in 50% and then they get grants through the curb funding for 50%. The county's paid for all of it. So they either get it like everybody else through the curb program, or they're not eligible for the curb funding. And I would think that as a community, they should be able to get enough to do those type of projects through the curb funding if they work with the other groups in their community. As if it's playground equipment, it's for the whole community. It's not for a specified group. So I think the community should be able to get it through our curb funding.
So through the read, it's not here. We can certainly draft up some verbiage and make an amendment and include a stipulation if that is council's wishes.
The problem with sorry, Donna here. The problem with the curb is that they don't always have, they don't always get what they want from it. But not only that, we don't have any control of whether they get it or not.
No, I understand how the curb works, but the problem is each little individual group out there is running around collecting that money, and there's times with this curb funding where these communities have to get together. I know in Hazard, once a year they get together and they decide what they're doing with that, and if there's a major project, then they all support that project. And I think it's time that as communities that starts to happen again. It's the project is for the community, so they have to learn to get along together. And we've got funding out there through CURB that would allow them lots of it if they applied for it properly. Because if we're going to start supplying 50% of that, and every community puts in playground equipment, that stuff's expensive.
I just have a question too. Is this equipment just for our the county's hamlets, or are they for? Does this go for standard?
The towns and the villages out there, if the groups use that money to put up stuff in the villages, so it ends up in the village because the community groups apply for it.
But I think this one putting forward, this playground equipment is just for our own hamlet.
Yes, that's correct, Councillor Baker. Just the policy would just be effective for the hamlets and the county.
I agree with Ben. I think the CURB funding was set up for this. We have ratepayers. I know in the village of Rocky Ford, it's probably 3 times the amount of people from the rural go to that village than what's in the village. And the rural component has always been a strong supporter. That's how we have the CURB. The villages aren't allowed to apply. It's the community groups that apply. I believe it should be CURB funding, and whatever they get out of it, the community always gets together and discusses their priorities. But I'm still concerned over number 4 too, is the maintenance of it. That's what got us into this pickle. A set of playground equipment was dilapidated. We'll say it didn't pass inspection, and the county tore it out, and the residents were. I seem to have a bad echo here. We're concerned that we just tore it out, so it's our responsibility to replace it. And we've got to come up with a better policy than that. According to this one, we'll pay for the first half of it, then in 20 years when it's no good, we'll go tear it out because it wasn't maintained, and then we'll end up footing the whole bill again. I think we try and do a little bit better job this time.
I still think that playground equipment should be supported by the taxpayers, our taxpayers, and that's our hamlets. The people that live in those villages or towns or whatever, they they use them. And then our hamlets that are paying our taxpayers I still have to apply for curb. Those are our taxpayers. So I think that for playground equipment, we should actually be supporting our hamlets.
If I can just remind everybody to please mute your phones when you're not speaking. It will help with the feedback.
So if we'd follow that thinking, Rosebud would get support to build half of the playground. Rocky Ford would get none, and yet more of the county residents use the Rocky Ford one than that go to Rosebud. We have to come up with a plan so all the ratepayers in the county are included or capable of applying for funds, and that's why that was the basis of the CURB funding. So all the community groups, county people can apply for funding and not be precluded from it.
My personal thoughts on this. Oh, go ahead.
Who's on?
It was Reeve Link, but I can wait. Go ahead.
Oh. Can I speak?
Yes, please, Councillor Armstrong.
Okay, sorry about that. Through the chair, I agree with Glenn. Like, it doesn't matter whether it's in a village or in a hamlet. It's the rural community groups that are applying for the CURB, and they can. If they want to go to the village and ask them for some funding, that's up to them. But the CURB is open to all our rural groups, and that doesn't matter whether it's in Carsland or Gleason or Cluny or Rosebud. It's available to them, and they need to know that. If we're going to start paying for all this, then what do we need the CURB out there for? The CURB is there to give them the funding if they apply for it, and it forces the communities to get together. If there's something major they need done, they need to get together as 4 or 5 different groups and apply for it under that. I would put a motion on the floor that this go back for further review and amendment.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor. I do just have a couple of comments. So for me, this is a complex question, and I do hear some difference of opinion amongst council for sure. Personally, for me, this is part of a bigger picture, and it's part of what we're talking about through our municipal development plan updates and our strategic, our recreation and public space strategy, and some of these bigger conversations we're having, even extending out into investment attraction and trying to minimize ag fragmentation. And from my perspective, some of the ways that you do that is by building attractive, more urban communities, which for us would be our hamlets. And in order to do that, we need to, and I realize we need to do it cautiously and carefully and with community engagement and involvement. But we need to build attractive communities, which to a certain extent can include recreation opportunities. Municipal affairs is very clear that that is part of our mandate as municipal governance. And so I like the policy. I like that it addresses some of our conversations previously around community buy-in. It would be the community that would be coming to council saying, we have identified this need within our community. We have fundraised. I like the idea of possibly not kind of matching this to CURB funding, because I would like it better to be generated by community efforts. I appreciate this policy. I actually support the county being responsible for the maintenance. We do have staff that are in the communities and trained staff that are educated and knowledgeable about this. I think could potentially be done in conjunction with our communities so that they're made aware. We're identifying that these playgrounds, I think we've heard before that it's not typically a lack of maintenance when they need to be replaced, but just more of, and please correct me, anyone who's more knowledgeable about this than me, but more of a time frame thing where after so many years, even with decent maintenance, they may need replacement. I think that could be done in collaboration with our communities so that they're aware, the typical lifespan of this swing set is 20 years. So if the communities through their long-term planning can be mindful of that and fundraising for that. So I just wanted to say I'm supportive of the policy. I appreciate the work that went into it. I wouldn't mind personally just some verbiage around like exclusion of curb funding. And maybe personally, I like the idea of this applying to our hamlets. I know we've talked about that before, that sometimes our servicing to our hamlets gets a little bit muddied with just not necessarily providing them specific funding when we are their governing body. So, and then I think CURB could be an opportunity to help our rural ratepayers and our community groups if they want to look at putting in projects in other municipalities. Those are just my personal thoughts. There is a motion on the floor, so open to council discussion.
Scott here. I was going to say the same thing, but you said it way better than I could. Yeah, I think we need to focus on the hamlets with some extra over and above and not put them in the same boat as the villages would be. I have no problem with the curb funding for the villages and the hamlets. We need to, they are identified as growth nodes. I think we need to start focusing on trying to develop those in some way, shape, or form, and recreation is part of it, obviously. And playgrounds, they'll probably get used more in our own hamlets, and yeah, they need to be maintained. That should be part of it, especially within our own hamlet. Thanks.
I'll say it again. I'm taking my division. All the populations, I'm thinking, are roughly the same, within 5 or 10% of all the other divisions. I have one hamlet that has a smaller playground that they put in, but most of my residents aren't close to a bigger hamlet. They have the village of Rockyford, and on the west end, they probably go into Strathmore, Bicycle for sure. Any funding in this county belongs to all the ratepayers. I agree helping hamlets. I agree helping the villages. But if we leave it ratepayer driven, the ratepayers want to put in a playground facility in Rockyford as compared to Rosebud or as compared to Carsland, we have the curb funding. If there's concerns with the curb funding, I know there is, that there's not enough money in it. Not everybody gets their way every year. Maybe we should be looking at that. But just to fund the hamlets for playground equipment and not the rest of it, I'm against that. I'm against the thinking of it, not just the money, but the ideology. And I'm also still against number 4. I'm not getting my point across. It says it will be the property, these playground equipments will be the property of Wheatland County, and the maintenance will be completed. I don't like that. I can say inspections will be done by Wheatland County to ensure that the safety of the equipment, but become the property of, and we have to strictly maintain it for, there's normal wear and tear, there's other kinds of wear and tear, and then there's time wear and tear and policy updates. The risk is too great. I'll do the inspections. If it comes to replacing half of it because whatever the reason, I should go back on the community and get the required maintenance done. The curb money wasn't just for building infrastructure, it was for the maintenance of infrastructure, for the year in, year out operating fees associated with these communities. We didn't start the curb funding to build a whole bunch of new infrastructure out there and not being able to support it. And with the curb funding, it spreads the money all over the county. Whoever the county residents decide where it's going. I don't like to do these ad hocs off of it. Fix what we have, but to keep adding on And I keep hearing in time of restraint, we're short of funding. Fix what we have and don't keep adding on new. These playground structures can come up to more than what we're doing for curb.
I agree with you, Glenn. Yeah, it's if we're going to put money into our hamlets, and I've said this for a long time, my idea is not to put it into playground equipment. My idea was to put it into infrastructure, underground infrastructure. If you want to promote development in these places, you have to have water and sewer and roads and alleys, that kind of stuff. That's how we promote the growth. Once that's in place, then this kind of stuff, the playground equipment stuff, can look after itself. But no, I agree with Glenn.
Any further discussion? There is a motion on the floor. I believe it was to direct staff to edit the policy and bring it back for further consideration.
Yeah, considering the comments through the discussion to revisit the policy.
So it might be helpful for administration to have a sense if there's general consensus. Let's start with, I do hear two councillors have indicated that they do not agree with the county. Primarily, I'm hearing concerns around maintenance. I believe this equipment would be installed on Wheatland County property, or typically it is. So I'm not sure how we go about the property, like the ownership of the equipment, but I'd like to see if we have consensus on that so that staff has more clarity in working on this document. So I've heard from Ben and Glenn would prefer.
Like everything else, the equipment, once it's in place, like whoever's putting it in, whichever community group is putting it in, they sign a contract with the county that they're responsible for the upkeep and the maintenance. And if they don't do it, then they don't put it in. And
so if I could hear from the rest of council, if there's consensus on that matter. I have a different opinion. Just looking to hear from the rest of council. If there's consensus, we are good. Staff probably has good direction, but we haven't heard from everybody.
If it's within our hamlet and it is on county property, I'm sure they're talking about insurance and whatnot. I can't see how it can't be owned by us. I'm thinking about, Gleason and Speargrass and things like that. So, yeah, if this is dedicated to the hamlets like this whole thing is, then that should be that way. Something else like in a village, I can see it totally different, or an ag society or something like that would be different. But if this is like, I'm thinking specific to the Gleason one, it was on a lot that we owned, we replaced. We have to have ownership of it for insurance and things. I'm sure of that.
And what's your position, Deputy Reeve Clausen, on having curb funding, like allowing the community groups to utilize curb funding as their matching funds? Because that's another question, whether that should be integrated into the policy.
I think for the villages, they use the curb funding. I believe that was the intent. And then for the hamlets, this is our way to fund that with the existing groups within. Is that clear?
Yeah, I'm just trying to delineate whether we would perhaps, like the question is whether the hamlets would be allowed to apply for curb funding and utilize curb funding as their minimum of 50% funding, or whether that would need to be generated within the community.
Within the community.
Okay, if I can just get some direction from Councillors Eichert, Bigger, and Wilson, just so that we know if we have consensus for administration. I would hate to send administration back to work on this and for them not to have clear direction on where the majority of council, like, just to bring this back and still not have clarity is not going to be helpful. So,
Councillor Eichert, I'm good with the policy and with the stipulation that the hamlets can't use curb funding to for their 50%, that it has to be independently fundraised.
Good luck with that.
Donna, you go first. I'm still thinking.
I like the proposal that's in front. I don't see a problem with the maintenance. I think Scott's right. I think we own it. I don't think there's much maintenance, like day-to-day maintenance to a playground. It'd be more the inspection. And if it needs to be replaced, I would think that they would go back to this policy, that we would replace it with 50%, and keep on going that way. For curb, I don't see any problem with applying for both.
Oh, shit, I thought you'd talk longer. Yeah, I agree with everybody, which is weird for me, number one. Because I fully agree with Ben and Glenn. Like, the reason I suggested the last meeting or whenever about the 50-50, because up until that point, we were fully funding replacements. And that's why I was like, look, we got to get this out of here and out of our purview, and it's not up to us strictly. If they want to you can only replace playgrounds through funding of curb and not any funding from council. I mean, I fully support that too, but I think it's just the only reason this came up because we took a step in God knows which direction with previous staff, kind of put us here. So we were just I was just throwing out ideas. That's why this event came up. But I don't think we allow them to double dip. No matter whether you're a village or the curb funding should be out of the question. It's individually raised. And the maintenance, I mean, it's like Donna said, I mean, playground is maintained. I mean, the chain falls off the swing, you go hang it back up. I mean, the average person probably wouldn't even call the county. They'd probably do it themselves. So, I mean, I don't think that maintenance is a big issue at all. So that's just my 2 cents.
okay. So we have heard from all of council now. Administration, do you feel like you have a good sense of well, I guess we will still vote on the motion on the floor. But I just want to make sure, does administration need any further clarification, or do you feel like you have good direction if you are directed to edit this draft policy?
I have another comment.
Yes, please, Councillor Kester.
I keep hearing the curb, and every time curb's mentioned, it's the villages. I think maybe council should take a look at the curb and the way it's set up. Curb is not for the villages. I think it says expressly in there, it's for the county. It's not for the villages. It's the community groups in the county that apply for the funding. And if it goes in the village or if it goes into the hamlet, there's way more hamlets in the county. I don't think all the curb funding is going to 3 villages in the town. Bulk of it has to be going to the hamlets and the rest of the county. We got to look at what we have instead of keep adding on. If we're going to go through with this policy, then let's get rid of the curb. and county decide without whatever you want to spend on, whatever you're buying, we'll do it. And that's where we come from. And now with the curb, after community consultation, we put a figure on it, and it seems to be working not too bad. But there seems to be a lot of confusion of the purpose of it and how it's funded and who's getting the money. And we keep adding on, and I'll say willy-nilly. I like to have a vision, not just to sit back and, we got a couple hamlets. So we got a hamlet in Rosebud. They put their own in. Got a hamlet in Gleason, which was much bigger, and the county put it in. And now maybe moving forward, Carsland will get one and they'll pay for half of it. Let's get a vision.
Yeah, that's a great point, and we are working on some visioning work through our municipal development plan and our recreation plan. Part of this did come from just some of the discussions we've had through council, and council did direct administration to draft this document in order to provide some clarity and some consistency to our decisions around these matters. Does administration have any comments that they would like to make regarding the process, the document?
Yeah, for sure. Thank you, Madam Reed. It's Matt here, and that's precisely it. So a couple points with regards to this. So in terms of clarity, with regards to amending the policy, absolutely we can fine tooth comb this, make it more meticulous, and focus on the points that council has raised and bring it back to council for consideration in the near future. Secondly, to Councillor Kester's point with regards to painting that vision and really understanding the assets that the county does currently have, we do have that asset inventory that we've gathered through the process of the Recreation and Culture Master Plan, basically the pre-process before engaging the public to develop that inventory, and it is going to be documented in coupling with that vision in that master plan. So as we move through this process developing that, council is going to be fully engaged in it and see where we are moving in terms of that direction. To Reeve Link's point with regards to the applications, yes, council did direct us to go back and revisit, basically looking at how we control the curb funding. In addition, how we also incorporate, if council remembers, gravel into the consideration. So administration and staff have developed a couple of applications, and I know that the gravel application has been, correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, but has been presented to council at a planning and priorities. And we are still developing that kind of community service application, because we were looking at reviewing that this summer moving into 2021 to get more control over the applications that come in and really reviewing the process currently that we have existing. So there's a lot of major things going on in the background, but we are certainly addressing all of these concerns. And just to reiterate, we can comb through this policy and take all the considerations into the policy and bring something back that is, I think, covers more of a broader scope to ensure that everything is more straightforward to people who review the policy moving forward.
Just a comment, Wilson. While I appreciate the proposed motion, I've actually thought it through. This is a larger conversation. I don't think we can see any policy until council's had good time to discuss what they want to see. Goes back to somewhat of the visioning. I think we can condense this visioning into a planning and priority session for this certain policy. But I mean, the discussion going around the table right now is too broad to have it again in a council meeting. I think we have to look at it having a wholesome discussion without time limit. But that's just my 2 cents.
We do have a motion on the floor from Councillor Armstrong.
I like Jason's idea. I would prefer to have a conversation in a committee of the whole or planning, and we look at curb and we look at this policy instead of first, before staff try and massage this policy. And that would give them definite thing and more definite course to follow, I guess.
The motion to move it to a committee of the whole discussion.
Are you amending your motion, Councillor Armstrong?
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
Move it to a committee of the whole, and we can discuss the whole program.
I support that, and then that gives us an opportunity to further discuss whether whether these types of decisions are best placed within CURB, whether we want to be looking at specific enhancements and infrastructure within our hamlet, and just the best way to serve our ratepayers overall on this. So is there any further discussion? So there's a motion on the floor to refer this, not just this policy, but the bigger question around visioning and recreation and CURB and all of that to a committee of the whole. Or would you be okay, Councillor Armstrong, if it was a planning and priority session? Councillor Armstrong, are you there?
You can throw crisp into the discussion and make it 3 hours long.
We'll maybe just leave the motion as it was standing. I don't hear Councillor Armstrong open to amending, so we'll leave it as it was presented. Is there any further discussion?
What is the motion now?
The motion was to refer to committee of the whole, the bigger conversation.
I would amend it to committee of the whole or planning priorities. To me, they're much the same kind of meeting.
I did ask if Councillor Armstrong would consider that amendment, but I wasn't here, or that amendment, but I wasn't hearing if Councillor Armstrong is in favor of that.
I'm thinking it might have communication problems.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering as well.
I don't care where you send it. Just send it back to so council has a chance to discuss it further. I think Councillor Wilson's right. It needs further discussion. I don't care where you send it. Just send it there.
Okay, perfect. Any further discussion on the motion? Last call. Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried. We have an 11:30 appointment, which is with Wheatland County Legal Representatives. It's a closed session under FOIP Section 16. Prior to us moving into closed session, we will just affirm that each of us is in a private setting where we will be the only person able to hear the confidential information. We'll just go through roll call. Reeve Link affirms. Deputy Reeve Clausen.
Affirm, but we got to dial into a different number, correct?
Yes, we'll move into a closed call. But we'll do this first. Councillor Wilson?
I'm good.
Councillor Bigger?
Good.
Councillor Eichert?
Looking around, my dog even left me, so I'm good.
Councillor Kester?
I'm good.
Councillor Armstrong?
I'm in secure location.
Thank you. I'll move us into closed session. Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried. Well, maybe just start with a roll call to make sure everybody's here. Deputy Reeve Scott Clausen,
I'm here.
Councillor Wilson,
Here.
Councillor Bigger,
Here.
Councillor Eichert,
Here.
Councillor Kester,
Here.
Councillor Armstrong.
Yeah, finally, I'm here.
Perfect. All right, we will move to agenda item 2.4.5 on page 76 of our council package. Expansion of jurisdiction for peace officers.
Hi, Madam Reeve. It's Matt here. I'll just ask for the senior peace officer to unmute and take it away.
Perfect, thank you.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
You bet, welcome.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. Sorry about that. I'm having some technical issues here. It gives me pleasure to present to you this afternoon this request for decision. And what we're asking for is that Council support Wheatland County making an application to the Solicitor General's office for our community peace officers to have expanded jurisdiction on 1- and 2-digit primary highways within Wheatland County. Prior to this, a policy decision over the last 30+ years has been that that community peace officers and before that special constables did not have authority or jurisdiction on 1- and 2-digit primary highways within their jurisdictions, but did on 3-digit primary highways and local roads, of course. And so it does say that on the report here that the Solicitor General's Program Manual, Section 24.15, restricts us from having those traffic safety enforcement on 1- and 2-digit primary highways. However, just due to some discussions that have come up over the last several months, the Solicitor General himself has put forth and put together to the Solicitor General's Department to allow community peace officers to apply for an exemption to have authority on 1- and 2-digit primary highways. Reason we're asking for this is we do see a lot of violations, safety concerns on them, and in past we've had a lot of complaints from ratepayers who live along those roadways, and we've not been able to provide them the level of service that we can provide to the rest of our ratepayers. And so, again, our request is that Council approve, and if it is approved, then we will make that application and hopefully hear back soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Officer Perman. Does Council have any questions about the report?
Chris, what's the expected revenue increase from tickets when taking over these jurisdictions?
I can't say for sure right now because it's so new. We don't even have any statistics as to how many tickets we would actually be writing.
Any idea on expenses?
No further expenses. The idea behind it is not for us to actually patrol these highways, but when we're on transition between our roads and 3-digit primaries to be able to deal with things that we find. Now, there will be minimal patrol on those roadways by us outside of our regular duties, but mostly transitional. I would anticipate probably an increase of 20% in violation tickets, but without ever having done this before, I don't have any numbers right now. Of course, if it's granted, I will be able to provide a report back within a few months as to where we're at with that.
Thank you.
Madam Reeve, it's just Matt here.
Yes, go ahead, thank you.
Just to Councillor Wilson, what we can do is we can provide statistics for Council's consideration in the Community and Development Services report once we kind of go through this process if Council approves this, and we can provide those stats for you and for Council to just review in our Community and Development Services report.
Yeah, that would be great. Go ahead, Tom. I can go after.
Okay, sorry. It's Councillor Eichert. I'm just just for my information, how many CPO ones do we have at the county?
We have 4, sir.
Thank you.
Scott here. I have a question about safety. I remember not that long ago, we had tried to get you some tasers and things like that for safety. And because of the increased exposure on these bigger highways, just worried that you don't have the coverage that you need, like with AFRAX and all that. Do you have the ability to, if you pull somebody over and they're doing a major drug transfer and you're caught in something you don't want to be in, do you have backup if you're doing this kind of thing?
We do have access on AFRAX radios to a control center that's monitored 24 hours a day. We also have an operational guideline as to how we handle these sorts of stops. So the danger level would not be as much more increased than the danger level we are dealing with now. There's higher volumes of traffic on the 1- and 2-digit primary highways. However, we've noticed too that criminals tend to go on the back roads because they know they're less patrolled. So we do have the tools. We do have the guideline that would support us moving back if we feel uncomfortable with something.
Yeah, Wilson here. I agree with extending our jurisdiction. I just want to make sure it's not an excuse later down the road. I trust Chris completely, but later down the road, I don't want to see, just because we have that greater authority and greater jurisdiction, that we increase our service, get another 2 officers, and just increase more costs is my concern. But I'm sure it's not a concern for present day. Let's say that.
Any other questions or comments from council? Council's wishes.
Councillor Eichert, I'll move that council accepts or approves the recommendations as proposed.
So Councillor Eichert moves that Wheatland County make an application to Alberta Justice and Solicitor General for community peace officers to have expanded jurisdiction on 1- and 2-digit primary highways within Wheatland County. Any discussion?
Just a comment. Can we make sure we let people know? Just because everybody says, oh, they're peace officers, they can't pull me over, I'm number 1. So let's just make sure people are aware of this. Do a really good educational thing if we get this.
So perhaps administration could do a communication regarding this motion if it passes, or once the application has been approved by Alberta Justice.
Absolutely. Yes, we can.
Any other questions or comments? Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you for bringing this forward.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Council. Please be safe out there. Take care.
You too. Thank you.
Bye.
We'll move to agenda item 2.4.6, WFCSS line of credit guarantees. Page 81 of our council package.
Good afternoon, Madam Reeve. So on page 81 is just a kind of a renewal of a line of credit guarantee. So it's something that we signed back in 2016. The agreement starts on page 84. It goes to 85. It's with Chinook Credit Union. The amount is $100,000. We're not the only municipality that is potentially signing this agreement. There's also the other 3 partnering villages in there as well. So that concludes my presentation.
Just a question, Ben Armstrong. If they've already got it, they're just going for renewal. They've never used it and they have no intention of ever using it. Why are we raising it?
I don't believe it is it's not being raised. I'd have to take a look for the reason why. It was something to do with Chinook Financial is why it was being renewed. Could have been a change of board members or something like that. I do know it was a request for a renewal.
Yeah, I know, but I thought when I read the renewal, it said to an increase up to 100,000.
No, it's been 100,000, and the WFCSS board does appreciate just having this as a potential backstop. Every once in a while, there's an issue with provincial payments being delayed or that type of thing. And it's just good with our tight budgeting with WFCSS to have this kind of, just knowing that we have this. Donna, I'm not sure if you have any other comments either.
Yeah, but it said in the letter they've never used it. They have no intention of using it.
It is it is just a renewal. They haven't upped the amount.
Okay.
And it is got to do with public or other monies coming in for funding and money's going out. It's just a backup.
Okay.
Okay, originally WFCSS got this line of credit, and it was sought after the town of Strathmore pulled out of FCSS, and it left the WFCSS in a lack of funding for sure. And time that mess was all cleaned up, we didn't have that much money in the bank, and FCSS's operating principle is they don't need to have a reserve. They're not a bank. They want to put as much funding out as available in every given year because of the structure of it. So the line of credit was seeked then to carry us over as an emergency thing. And and they've never used it. So it's just there as a backup. Some years the funding from the province doesn't come through in time, or if you have bills that need paying. I'm trying to think of usually the partners for the funding are flexible, but sometimes not. So I'm okay with it. It's not costing us that much, and it gives the board some security. I'm okay with it. I'll make a motion that we continue it.
Thanks, Councillor Kester. There's a motion on the floor. Is there any further discussion?
Question to administration. What percentage of this $100,000 does the county agree on? Like it says that the Alberta government to determine the percentages for the requisitioning. So what is our percent? Just for my information.
It would be the same percentages that were circulated when I brought forward the WFCSS letters in our last council package. I believe the percentages were outlined in that.
Okay, thank you. I'll look that up. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Brian, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
No, those percentages should be in there. I just can't recall them off the top of my head, but they would be in there. I can also email that information to council at a later date.
Any other discussion on the motion? Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried. We'll move to 2. Request for relief on utility payments. Agenda page item 86.
Yes, council. On page 86 is a request for relief on a utility account payment. The request was sent in on, I believe it was April 9th. So just kind of bring this cost forward to council just for your consideration. Thank you.
So through the chair, when I read that letter, when I was reading through that, it seems to me like he's got some issue with his insurance company, because if he'd have been following his standard regulations, the insurance company would have covered it. Something in there went awry and his insurance company has refused to pay for it. So I'm trying to understand why we should pick up his bill.
I think it's a she.
I don't care if it's a he or a she. Why would we be picking up their bill? The renters were gone. They were in there doing maintenance work, or renewing all their floors and cupboards and whatever it was they did. So there was nobody in the house, so they would have to be looking into that every 24 hours. And for some reason, their insurance company, or he didn't have insurance or whatever, or she didn't have, but there's a reason why the insurance company didn't pay it, and I'm wondering why we should have to pay it.
I don't, and I could be wrong, but I don't typically think insurance would cover the utility cost for the burst pipe. That's just being for personal experience after, unfortunately, multiple floods in our home. They wouldn't cover the water leakage, or they haven't from our experience during a flood. The only thing I wasn't sure if council, I'm not actually in favor. I don't think we have precedence for covering something like this. I couldn't recall if we had previously discussed possibly the wastewater portion of it, because obviously if it was escaping through a burst pipe, it's not going through our wastewater system, something like that.
Yeah, but if you read the letter, my concern, if you read the letter, they refer to it as the town employee, but I think it's got to be a hamlet if it's ours. But they said they drove by and seen water coming out of the house, so it was obviously on for quite some time before anybody checked it. So I'm just wondering why. I don't think we should be paying it for them.
Councillor Eichert, I appreciate being a landlord. I appreciate the position these people are in, but I know that what the answer would be in the city of Calgary if it's a pipe burst on your property, you're responsible for it. So I don't see how we can justify forgiving this loan or this payment.
Wilson agrees.
This isn't the first time our county employees have seen water come out of a basement window before, and we didn't pay for that one either.
Yeah.
It was asked, and it was a pain, but we never paid for it.
Scott here. I'm not in favor of this. And if I remember right, there was something in the old Galician schoolhouse years ago that there was a pipe that burst there, and there was a substantial amount of water. And I don't even think we forgave the school division to pay it. And I think it was over 10 grand. That was before my time, but I remember reading about it.
I don't have a problem giving them a couple of months to pay it, but I don't think we should be paying it.
Councillor Wilson, had you started a comment earlier?
I just agree with the comments previously. That's all. Thanks, Bill.
There is a recommended motion from administration.
I'll move that council do not provide payment relief for utility account number 2195.03.
There's a motion on the floor. Is there any discussion? Is there any councillor opposed to the motion? Motion is carried. We'll move to agenda item 2.48, operating and capital budget, starting on page 90 of our council package.
Yes, good afternoon, Council. So this may be a little bit longer. So there's kind of 3 separate resolutions as well. So what I'll do is I'll start with the first one. The first one has to do with the operating budget. So the report is in front of you. As we have in previous years, administration has brought forward an interim operating budget to Council for approval. The interim operating budget was approved in December of 2019, and then what we do as a process internally at the county is that we wait until other requisitions come in, and then we update our final operating budget just to get the most accurate number we possibly can. With that as well, so the requisitions that we wait for are the education requisition, the housing body, and the solid waste requisition. So those have all come in. Initially there was a higher education requisition, which was then pulled back from the province, and then they just brought forward another one, which did have an increase, but not as substantial as it initially once was. We also have updated the WFCSS funding and the fire dispatch and the library funding as well. We've updated all wages for vacant positions, employer paid benefits as well. Any formula funding in the budget that we've done with predetermined formulas, such as the fire operating funding, the CRISP and the CURB funding, those have all been updated as well. One other item we had to update, which is kind of unfortunate for the county, is our interest revenue levels. So those went down just with the recent kind of drop in interest rates. So that one actually went down substantially, and you'll find that in the changes tab as well. Another big kind of item we took out is the removal of lending the funds to the WRC for phase 3. Just in discussions with them, it seems like they've secured other funding sources for the phase 3 construction, which is great. I think they had an advancement of funds, and they have a little bit of funds left over from the phase 1. And then besides that, all the changes to the operating budget are in there. So any changes that you would see would be highlighted in the budget, and then it's also on page 93 to 98. A lot of the adjustments, there are quite a few. A lot of them are fairly minor, but they are just federally updated employer requirements of the CPP and EI and the WCB as well. WCB is provincial, but it's kind of still a regulated amount. We also had the planning and priority session with council yesterday, and during that planning and priority session, it was, as council clearly indicated from the start, it's very important for council to keep any potential tax increases to nil this year, so none have been passed forward on a municipal level. There has been some increases on provincial requisitions with the education specifically, and those ones the county graciously offset with our own internal revenue sources. So even though other parties are asking more money from our ratepayers, the council decided to kind of offset that with taking a little bit less municipal taxes from ratepayers as well. So yesterday at the planning and priority session, the direction that council provided administration was just to reduce out of the initial budget the residential taxation by about 130,000. I'll provide the numbers here shortly, and then the farm taxation, which bring that back down to previous year's level. So, and then just to also note, so maybe is there any questions with the operating budget? Okay, so just to give council just the exact numbers that we are reducing the current presented budget by. So what we're going to, we're suggesting is that we're going to have a reduction of residential taxation revenue. So that's line 1-00-00- quadruple 1-00, reducing that line by $121,000, 121,430 down to a total of 7.575171, and then also a reduction in farmland taxation revenue, and that general ledger code is 1-00-00-1114-00, and reducing that amount by 199,957 for a total of $3,058,668. And just to offset those two revenue reductions, what we would do is we would reduce a transfer to reserves for that exact total of 321,387. And that reserve transfer on that line would be just down to 4.9 million.
Any questions on the operating budget? Brian, would you prefer we put forward motions for the operating and capital budget at the same time at the end, or should we deal with the operating budget now?
It's really up to council's will. Might be a little bit more clean in the minutes if we just do the resolution for the operating first. So the resolution for the operating budget may differ from the council package. It would just be the reduction in revenues that I had previously noted during the presentation.
Yeah, I can make that motion. I move that council approve operating budget 2020 to 2022 as presented with following reduction of residential tax revenue 100,111,000 of 121,430 for a total of $7,575,171, and reduction of farmland taxation revenue line item 100,000,111,400 of 199,957 for a total of 3,058,668, and a reduction of transfer to reserves line item 23300276200 of, oh my god, my eyes are going blurry. 321,387 for a total of $4,911,471. Sorry, gotta go put glasses on.
There's a motion on the floor. Is there any discussion or any questions? Is any councillor opposed to the motion? Motion is carried. Looking for a second resolution to rescind resolution 19-12-61.
So moved.
Councillor Kester has moved. Is there any discussion? Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried, and we'll move to the capital budget.
Yes, council. So on page 158 of your agenda package is the capital budget. So the rescindment of the previous motion was just to just because there was quite a bit of changes to the capital budget. So the capital budget was approved in December, similar to the interim operating budget. However, there was such shifts with COVID-19 and just uncertainty of funding sources that we had to scale back quite a few projects. So administration did meet. We did discuss changes with council as well, and we have just deferred a lot of projects, and just until we really determine what our kind of our funding sources are going to be like during the year. That's really it. We are getting together a list of shovel-ready projects to also submit to our local MLA, just for potential stimulus money. So any project that would be funded that way would be brought back to council as well. We definitely have our eyes on a few certain projects. Any changes in the budget have also been highlighted in an orange line for each tab. Yeah, if there's any other questions, please feel free. Thank you.
Any questions? A motion to approve the capital budget?
I'll move. Councillor Reichert.
Councillor Reichert has moved. Any discussion or question? Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried. We did have two motions arising from our closed session regarding the audited financial, or regarding the financial statements and the audit findings summary.
I'll move the 2019 audit as presented.
Councillor Clausen has moved the audit. Is there any questions or discussion? Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried. Looking for a motion regarding the financial statements.
So moved.
Councillor Kester has moved. Is there any questions or discussion? Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried. Just reviewing our agenda. I believe that completes our agenda unless anybody sees anything I've missed. Looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved, Ben Armstrong.
Thanks, Ben. Is anybody opposed? Motion is carried. This meeting is complete. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Stay safe.
Be careful.
Thanks.